The accounting firm of Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba presents the 24th College Football Hall of Fame season of Fighting Irish Preview. And now, the Banditos' fresh-made daily kickoff with your host, Phil Houck.
Last week, with a commanding 45-3 victory, Notre Dame had the look of a team that may have found some answers on the offensive side of the ball. And the defense accomplished something that ND hadn't done in a long time. The 2020 Irish have now held consecutive opponents to less than 10 points for the first time since 2002. And there are some parallels between the 2020 Irish and that team from 18 years ago. 2002 was Ty Willingham's first year, and yes, that team did have something in common with the 2020 Irish. They played terrific defense, but struggled on offense. The defense was opportunistic and was led by consensus All-American cornerback Shane Walton. Walton had 7 interceptions, and the 2002 defense picked off 21 in total. They also racked up 12 fumble recoveries, and they returned 6 of those turnovers for touchdowns. 9th best in the nation in points given up, and on consecutive Saturdays in mid-October, they held Stanford and Pittsburgh to single-digit points, just like the 2020 Irish have accomplished in the last 2 weeks. On the other hand, the 2002 offense, in some ways like 2020, struggled. Carlisle Holiday and Pat Dillingham combined for a grand total of just 11 touchdown passes on the season. And it was a converted quarterback, Arnaz Battle, that led the team in receiving. Overall, in 2002, the offense ranked 108th out of 117 teams nationally in yards gained and 95th in scoring. Despite the offensive struggles, the Irish that year won their first 8 games and reached number 4 in the polls. But in Week 9, the dream ended with a 14-7 loss to an unranked Boston College team. The Irish went on to drop their last 2 that year to finish 10-3. It is said that defense wins championships, but the lesson from 2002 is that a solid and balanced offense is necessary as well. Last week, the dominant play of the Notre Dame defense continued, but more importantly, an offensive outburst against a highly regarded Pittsburgh defense is a sign of hope that comparisons to the 2002 team will not define the 2020 Irish. Banditos with 3 Fort Wayne locations, Waynedale, Georgetown, and Glenbrook Commons. Banditos is fresh made daily. Now, stay tuned for Fighting Irish Insight from America's foremost authority on Notre Dame football, Tim Priester, senior editor of IrishIllustrated.com. After these words from Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, Shear McCulloch Auctioneers, and Flight by Yingling. Only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories. Raise the bar. This is Fighting Irish Preview.
The University of Notre Dame exemplifies dedication to hard work, integrity, and personal values, which result in success in the classroom and on the football field. The professionals at Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, like Notre Dame, know the same dedication, and their experience and expertise provide peace of mind for you and your business. Tax planning, tax compliance, auditing, business valuation, and estate planning, the full-service accounting firm of Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, like the Irish, has what it takes to help you achieve success. Located in Fort Wayne near Jefferson Point, Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba proudly supports Notre Dame football and congratulates all those who are a part of the greatest tradition in all of sports. Go Irish!
This is Art Salzberg. I don't endorse everybody, but I found a company that I think provides a great service. The company is Shear McCulloch, and what they do is targeted specifically for seniors, people who may be thinking about downsizing and are overwhelmed by the thought of what it's going to take. Shear McCulloch will pack you up, move you, and then sell your house and everything that's left. Now that's the most comprehensive relocation service anywhere, and what I call in sports terms covering all the bases. Shear McCulloch uses an international auction platform to make sure your possessions are seen by the right buyers. They're looking to get top dollar from people who have an interest in the special treasures you've collected over the years. Shearer McCulloch is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau and highly recommended by leading retirement communities and law firms. If Sharon and I decide to make a change in lifestyle, we'll be calling Shearer McCulloch at 441-8636. That's 441-8636. We trust them, and we know they'll make things easy and profitable.
Introducing Flight by Yuengling, the next generation of light beer. For those who don't follow trends, but craft them. Flight by Yuengling is 12 ounces of uncompromised refreshment from America's oldest brewery. With only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories, this is premium refreshment 6 generations in the making. Don't just raise a glass, raise the bar. Flight by Yuengling. Now available wherever beer is sold. DG Yuengling and Son Incorporated. Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Please enjoy responsibly.
Now back to Fighting Irish Preview with your host, Phil Houck.
Tim Priester, well, here we go again. The perception, as you know, changes every week. You've talked about that. So with a 45-3 pasting of Pittsburgh, what is this week's perception of the Irish?
Well, a week ago they were bad. Now they're good, right, Phil?
Yeah, well, good on offense or something.
Bad on offense after Louisville, good now, and certainly good defensively, which is pretty much a weekly thing for Notre Dame. Yeah, it was the kind of explosion that you were looking for there in the second quarter, 21 points in the last 10 and a half minutes of the second quarter, and I think that really took the life out of Pittsburgh, and then a quick 17 in the third quarter. It was the kind of performance that Brian Kelly was hoping for. He challenged them to try to be great and start hammering people and playing up to the level that's going to be necessary come November 7th. And it worked. And I don't think people should misconstrue, the whole notion about looking ahead. His whole point is continue to play well and play extremely well against Georgia Tech in order to prepare yourself for Clemson. So 45-3 was just what they were looking for. They caught Pittsburgh playing for its 7th straight week. It looked like they wore down a little bit. But Notre Dame had the advantage, and they went for it, and they took advantage of it.
Well, that offensive line and the defense just seem to be beating teams up, and you can see it in almost every game this year. By the fourth quarter, the other team has had it. And you mentioned the idea of Notre Dame looking ahead to Clemson. Yeah, they are. And Brian Kelly, as you said, kind of admitted it, but it's not so much looking ahead. It's just that Notre Dame needs to be at that level every week. But don't you think that Georgia Tech probably is going to use that as an item of inspiration for their team?
There's no doubt. And as a former head coach, I would absolutely have done the same thing. But by the same token, Georgia Tech's given up 121 points in the last 2 weeks. So you can go ahead and motivate, but their problem, Georgia Tech's problem, is they can't stop anybody defensively. And when it comes down to it, when they have faced good defenses, they have struggled offensively. They do have some weapons that we'll get into. But yeah, I would, as Jeff Collins, the head coach at Georgia Tech, absolutely, I'd press that button frequently this week.
I think the point is that Brian Kelly's trying to make is that if we're going to take this team to the next level, we have got to raise our play in every game. Now, on offense last week, Tim, Kyren Williams, a pedestrian for him, 17 carries on 38 yards. Sebo and Ian Book actually ended up with a bit more yardage. The Irish, quote, only gained 115 yards on the ground, but why is that a good thing?
Well, that's just about twice as much as what Pittsburgh allows per game. The average per carry wasn't great, but it was enough from the standpoint that Notre Dame converted 4 3rd and 1s on the ground, and that's significant not only in sparking the passing game, but that's significant for Notre Dame because they've struggled in that area. And you can now see an offensive line, and this is going against a real quality Pittsburgh defensive line. They're getting push. You have running backs that can squeeze out every last inch that's available, especially Kyren Williams. And that really allowed them to continue possession of the football. Notre Dame suddenly become a time of possession football team, which is totally against what Brian Kelly has been. He was last in the country the year before he came to Notre Dame. But they've slowed the pace, and it's working for Notre Dame. Not as much tempo, and not really any tempo. it's worked well for them. It's playing to their strengths with their offensive line and their tight ends.
Well, and they are playing to their strengths, but I want to get a little bit more into that tempo issue. And I think you wrote about it this week. The Irish are 7th in the nation right now in time of possession. That's an amazing stat. 41 minutes last week against Pitt, they held the ball. And as you said, this is not Brian Kelly's MO, but he addressed that this week. Tell me, what did he say? What is his has he given up on tempo, or is it something else?
Well, for the time being, but he listed all 4 of the best receivers that have played for him: Will Fuller, T.J. Jones, and Chase Claypool, and Miles Boykin, and others. He said if he had those receivers, if they had an experienced group of receivers, they might be lining up 4 wide. But that's not what they have, and they know they have a veteran offensive line that now has 25 plus 1, 139 career starts, a couple of big, powerful, great blocking tight ends. So they're playing to that strength. But if if the pendulum swings back to having more skill position talent at wide receiver, and that could be, a year or 2 from now, then they'll go back to it. But it makes sense because, anybody that's been in coaching, you want your system in, but you have to play to the strengths of your personnel.
Yeah, a great example of Brian Kelly doing exactly that. Now let's talk a little bit about that passing game, which showed some life last week. And we saw the arrival of Ben Skowronek, who had been battling through some injuries earlier in the season. 2 catches, 2 long touchdowns. So where does the receiver stand now that Kevin Austin is definitely out for the season? And is there enough that the Irish now have to beat a team like, say, Clemson at that position?
I hate to put it in those terms per se, because I'm not really sure what beats Clemson anymore. They would have a 37-game winning streak had they won the national championship game last year. But hey, Ben Skowronek, I think what they do know is this, that they have 2 guys for certain that are skill position athletes that you can throw the football to in 50-50 throws. And Ben Skowronek is one of them because he is 6'3", 230, goes up, gets the ball, great hands, strong. And the other one, of course, is Michael Mayer, who had a big day as well. Is it enough for Clemson? Maybe not. The answer is probably no when you consider that everybody has great difficulty beating them. But you get, maybe you get Avery Davis involved a little bit more. You get the tight ends involved like they're wide receivers. Skowronek is kind of a hybrid wide receiver tight end. And then I don't know that Jordan Johnson plays a role right away, but he's a freshman that's been moved up to the quote varsity moving forward, or at least for this weekend against Georgia Tech. So it's not a real explosive, 18 yards per catch type receiving core, but it is what it is. And I think that there's enough in the passing game, especially if you accentuate the tight ends, to still do some really good things throwing the football.
And Ben Skowronek just had a terrific game last week. I got to repeat that. And another guy that had a terrific game. Let's give a little more love to the tight ends overall. Michael Mayer, 5 for 74 yards. Tommy Tremble, he's not catching very many passes right now, at least not the last couple of weeks, but he is a devastating blocker. He's always showing up there. But focus first on Mayer and then talk about why maybe Tremble hasn't been caught in as many passes. Mayer is just a beast.
He's unbelievable. The combination of size at 249, speed, the agility. And in a very short period of time, we've seen what an agile tight end he is. And yeah, it's taken some throws away from Tremble, but I think the pendulum swings back and forth on that. This weekend could be a big game for Tremble, and it's Mayer that's doing most of the blocking. I think they're both talented enough in both areas, that. How many receptions do you? A lot of people. Well, Tommy Tremble didn't catch a football. Skowronek or Mayer caught 5. How many receptions are you looking for from the tight end? I think that pendulum will swing back and forth between Mayer and Tremble. But Mayer is a really, really special talent, a very, very unique athlete at that size. I remember when Notre Dame recruited him, he was equally good as a defensive end. Had they placed him there, that would have been just as exciting. But that level of athleticism and agility at 249 is really very unique at the tight end position.
Yeah, he's just going to be great to watch for probably no more than 3 years. Okay, on the defense, of course, the Irish defense, they continue to perform extremely well. Pitt, 3 points, 162 yards of total offense. This defense is playing historically well, currently 6th nationally in scoring defense, 9th in total defense. Not getting a lot of sacks, but knocking it out of the park in tackles for loss. Tim, what are the chances that Clark Lea remains our defensive coordinator next year?
Well, it's going to be tough. As you know, Philly finished number 2 for the Boston College job, and Coach Hafley's doing a heck of a job at BC with Phil Dracovic at quarterback. But, I think it's going to be difficult. Now, he's not going to just jump at any opportunity. I think it has to be a Power 5 conference team, and not every Power 5 conference team. His alma mater is Vanderbilt. That's a really tough place to win. Yeah. So I don't know how viable that is. But it will be difficult, Phil. There's no doubt about it. He's really talented, but the sooner he becomes a head coach somewhere else, the more prepared he is to be that Notre Dame head coach down the road, and knowing Clark Lea pretty well, about as well as anybody in the media. I think Clark Lea down the road with experience as a head coach would be a really, really good fit for Notre Dame. He loves Notre Dame. He understands what Notre Dame's about, and he is a Notre Dame type guy. So maybe down the road that will happen. But I think it's best that he goes somewhere else, even at the expense of Notre Dame defense in the short term.
Yeah, well, I think he's going to get some opportunities after this season, so fans enjoy what he's putting on the field. Tim, the obligatory poll question: the Irish win by 42 and drop a slot in the polls. This did not really surprise me, but I look at things differently than most people. But a lot of Notre Dame fans were upset. What was your take?
My take was that Ohio State is one of 3 teams that can win it all every year, along with Clemson and Alabama. My take is that Ohio State played, and they were elevated to the number 3 spot. I spent about 1.2 seconds concerning myself with that.
Yeah, I thought Ohio State played really well. It made a lot of sense, and I couldn't really understand all the upset people about that, but that's our world. Tim, a quick hit. Any news this week on the COVID front for the Irish?
A couple guys tested positive. I don't believe that they are frontline players. In fact, I think they are walk-ons. I have not heard anything that would indicate anybody or anything is going to be compromised going into the Georgia Tech game.
Okay, that's good news. So the trip to Pittsburgh was non-eventful. Tim, right. And Tim, one more question, and this has to do a little bit more about how we're covering the Irish this year. Limit of 15 in the press box. Even fewer of us get to go on the road. All access to coach and players via Zoom. No access to practices at all. And to me, that's really been a huge difference. How much has the prescribed process, has it taken some of the joy out of the profession? And well, let's talk about that.
Well, I think through the years, when I think about all the relationships that have been developed with players and coaches, that's where it's hurt. That's what hurts, is that you don't have that face-to-face interaction. You're talking with players via Zoom, and the newer players, the younger players have no idea. That's just a name and a voice, and they can't put a face with it. So from that perspective, and you talked about the practices. Well, we would get 4 or 5 preseason practices, and that would give you a really good opportunity to evaluate just what kind of personnel Notre Dame has, what the strengths and weaknesses are of players. But it is different. It's more convenient. You're not driving back and forth to Notre Dame and spending as much time en route to conduct these interviews. It's a lot more convenient, but I would certainly trade that for the face-to-face interaction with the players and coaches.
Well, for somebody that's a few miles down the road like I am, the Zoom conferences, that's been good, but boy, do I miss the colleagues, and I miss game day, and I miss being in that press box. And if anyone out there is interested in what the joy of the sports media profession can be like, or at least means to me, go to fightingirishpreview.com and look up a 2-part article I wrote last summer entitled "I'll Always Have 2019. Thanks, Tim. Coming up, it's the all-time Irish hero, Key to an Irish Victory, Injury Report, and the world-famous Irish Illustrated Prediction. And during the break, it's the Fighting Irish Fact of the Week, brought to you by Ron Wise and the Wise Insurance Agency. This is the 346th edition of Fighting Irish Preview.
Shine a light into my room. Oh, I'm sure the morning sun can eliminate my gloom. If it shine a little light into my room, all I want is some sunshine, sunshine, shining through these windows of mine. And I want it to be easy, easy. Your clear choice is Bushy.
Treat each house as if it was your own. Our mission statement at Bushy's Windows, Doors, and Remodeling. Hi, I'm Jim Bushy. At Bushy's, we're proud of our home improvement products that we offer, and we are even more proud of the award-winning installers who will come to your home. Right now, take advantage of our 12-month 0% interest payment plan, and estimates are always free. So call Bushy's at 456-1247, stop into our showroom, or check out bushysfw.com. Bushy's Windows, Doors, and Remodeling. Your clear choice.
Your clear choice is Bushy's. Your clear choice is Bushy's.
The Fighting Irish Fact of the Week is brought to you by our friends at the Wise Insurance Agency. With 1,199 career yards rushing, Ian Book is number 2 all-time on the ND quarterback rushing list. Number 1 on the list, Tony Rice, with 1,921 yards. Call Ron Wise at the Wise Insurance Agency or go to thewiseinsuranceagency.com and get an auto or home quote in less than 5 minutes.
Introducing Flight by Yuengling, the next generation of light beer. For those who don't follow trends, but craft them. Flight by Yuengling is 12 ounces of uncompromised refreshment from America's oldest brewery. With only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories, this is premium refreshment 6 generations in the making. Don't just raise a glass, raise the bar. Flight by Yuengling. Now available wherever beer is sold. DG Yuengling and Son Incorporated. Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Please enjoy responsibly.
Now back to Fighting Irish Preview with your host, Phil Houck.
This is Fighting Irish Preview. The 4th-ranked Irish are on the road this week at Georgia Tech. TV coverage on ABC starts at 3:30 p.m. South Bend time. And it's now time for the all-time Irish hero, brought to you by the Marina at Lake Gage. Chris Craft, Mastercraft, and Premier Pontoons. We share your boating passion. This week, we continue our series on the great pass receivers of the Brian Kelly years. In January of 2010, as part of his first class of incoming freshmen, Brian Kelly welcomed a 6-foot, 190-pound 4-star receiver out of the state of Georgia. T.J. Jones, the son of Andre Jones, who had been a starting defensive end on the 1988 national championship team. Jones started 7 games in his first season, catching 23 passes good for 306 yards and 3 TDs. Having established himself in that first year, there were high expectations for him as a sophomore. Sadly, tragedy struck when he lost his father to a brain aneurysm during the summer. No surprise, this event hit TJ hard, and at times he seemed to struggle on the field as a sophomore. Still, he started all 12 games and put up good numbers. 38 catches, 388 yards, and another 3 touchdowns. But Jones hit his stride as a junior during Notre Dame's run to the BCS National Championship game. He accumulated 50 catches, 649 yards, and 4 touchdowns, caught the winning score in a rainstorm against Stanford, and was one of the bright spots for the Irish in the national championship game with 6 catches for 90 yards. By 2013, Jones was named as a team captain and was established as a star. He met that challenge with a career-high numbers of 70 receptions, 1,108 yards, and 9 touchdowns. For his career, Jones's 2,429 yards receiving ranked 7th best in school history, just below Tim Brown and ahead of Tom Gatewood. Tim, T.J. Jones was a mainstay on Brian Kelly's first Notre Dame teams.
Really a ton of respect for T.J. Jones, the person and the player. Eventually was named captain, a quiet captain, a quiet leader. But he did it with his play. The most successful freshman wide receiver, I believe, off the top of my head, under Brian Kelly. That seems to be a hot topic lately. Everybody wants Brian Kelly to play freshman receivers, whether they're ready to play or not. But T.J. Jones was, and the 23 receptions is a high water mark for freshmen. The thing that I really respect about TJ Jones was he made himself faster his senior year. And we saw the productivity go up with the 770 catches for 1,100 yards and 2,400 in his career. A lot of respect for TJ Jones. Knew Andre Jones, know how difficult that was for him. I picture TJ Jones as a young kid. He's all grown up now, but when I think of TJ Jones, I see that baby face and what a quality human being he was and is.
Yeah, and his father was not the only Notre Dame connection Jones had, because Raghib Rocket Ismail happens to be TJ's godfather. TJ Jones, another Marina at Lake Gage, all-time Irish hero. The Marina at Lake Gage, we love boats. And it's now time for the Aspen Mortgage Key to an Irish Victory. Tim, Georgia Tech is 2-4. They own a narrow victory over Florida State and a 19-point win over Louisville. 2 weeks ago, Clemson pounded them 73-7. Last week at BC, they fell to Phil Jurkovec and BC 48-27. Head coach Jeff Collins is in the second year of transitioning from Tech's old triple option offense and went 3-9 a year ago. The offense is led by 6'3", 215-pound true freshman Jeff Sims. Team's second leading rusher on the year. He has completed 55% of his throws, good for 1,196 yards and 8 TDs. He has, however, thrown 10 interceptions. Overall, the offense has shown pretty good balance. Freshman Jamar Gibbs, a real talent, is the leading rusher with 308 yards, 2 scores, and a decent 4.5 yards per carry. Impressively, he has also caught 4 touchdown passes. 6'2", 220-pound senior Jalen Camp is the leading receiver, 17 catches, good for 226 yards and 2 TDs. He's part of a top 3, which has now been together for 2 seasons. Yellow Jacket tight ends, by the way, have combined for a total of just 4 catches on the year. The offensive line is a mix of 1 freshman, 2 veterans, and 2 transfers. They've paved the way to a rushing game that ranks 39th nationally, and they've given up just 10 sacks. Defensively, Tech will employ a 4-2-4 scheme and rotate a lot of players. They're giving up 41.2 points per game, and they've had difficulties defending the pass. Also difficulties in the red zone and on third down. And mistakes have plagued Tech. Missed field goals and extra points, 18 turnovers, lots of penalty yards, and by a wide margin, they are worst in the nation, having given up 6 blocked kicks. Tim, no doubt some of the defensive stats are skewed a bit by Clemson's 73-point blowout, but this team makes lots of mistakes. What is the Aspen Mortgage key to an Irish victory?
Well, Phil, you mentioned the 41.2 per game. Go ahead and eliminate the Clemson 73-point outburst on them. They're still giving up 34 points a game, and they're 76 in the country in scoring defense. 18 touchdown passes they've allowed, and you mentioned the 18 turnovers. Having said all that about the defense, I'm impressed with Jeff Sims and Jahmyr Gibbs and a couple of their receivers. I think the key to Notre Dame victory is just having, some containment of Sims and Gibbs. I really, really like Gibbs. I think he's a quality running back. But if you just slow that offense down, I don't see Georgia Tech's defense being able to contain Notre Dame's offense.
Okay, well, just slow that offense down a bit. That is Tim Priester's Aspen Mortgage key to an Irish victory. And Tim Priester, who is this week's Aspen Mortgage key player for the Irish?
Well, Phil, I thought about this long and hard. It's hard to pick out a defensive player per se. You could always pick out Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, as good as he has been. But you know what? Because of all the things that I said about the Georgia Tech defense, my pick this week is Ian Book. I think Ian Book can build upon what he did last week. I think he can add to those 18 touchdown passes that Georgia Tech has allowed. They've got the weapons at tight end. I know you're now missing Austin and Lindsey, but I think there's more than enough wide receiver and pass catching talent for Ian Book to be the key player for Notre Dame this week.
Well, and it'd be nice to see an Ian Book heading into the Clemson game. So Ian Book is your Aspen Mortgage key Irish player this week. Aspen Mortgage, for all your mortgage needs, call 486-LOAN. And it's now time for the Injury Report, brought to you by Indiana Physical Therapy. Your choice for physical therapy now with 20 Indiana locations. Tim, a pretty good report from Brian Kelly late in the week. How do the Irish stand health-wise going into Game 6?
Well, we already know about Kevin Austin being out and Paul Mawala and those guys. But as far as those that are still in play for this year, Braden Lenzy will be out. He had a PRP for the grade 2 hamstring injury that he has. So that will definitely keep him out for Georgia Tech and Clemson. They hope to have him back after that for Boston College, but you have a bye week after Boston College. So it may be a while before we see Braden Lenzy, but when he does return for North Carolina in the home stretch of the season, he should be a lot healthier than he has been trying to overcome a hamstring injury.
Okay, so most everybody is healthy, but the receiving corps has been bit. Thanks, Tim, and that is the Indiana Physical Therapy Injury Report. And it's now time for the world-famous Irish Illustrated prediction, brought to you by IrishIllustrated.com. Tim Priester, Vegas says the Irish by 20. What does America's foremost authority say?
Boy, this looks like Notre Dame could score as much as they want going on the road for the second straight week. I'm not sure that it will be quite as easy as they made it last week. And yet, having said that, Georgia Tech is really struggling defensively. I think you have to put a cap on what Georgia Tech is capable of scoring against Notre Dame's defense. And to me, that looks like it's 14 points. And I would say that's the maximum. I'm going to go, Phil, with Notre Dame 42, Georgia Tech 14.
42-14 in favor of the Irish. That is Tim Priester's world-famous Irish Illustrated prediction. And Tim, the Irish are better in all phases of the game than Georgia Tech, no question in my mind. But I expect that in anticipation of Clemson, they're going to kind of play it a bit vanilla and maybe not be at their peak of intensity. I'll take the Irish over Georgia Tech 37-14. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Phil.
Go Irish, and thanks for listening to Fighting Irish Preview. Special thanks to Jim Shovelin, Art Salzberg, and studio producer Adam Schenkel. Fighting Irish Preview is the copyrighted property of Judge Phil Productions.
Podcasts by Federated Media. Podcasts by Federated Media.